My next guest has some advice for us, definitely on that front. She is Acooa Ellis. She's the Senior Vice President of Community Impact for the Greater Twin Cities United Way. She oversees their work on grant making, coalition engagement, systems change, and public policy. Acooa, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
You know, your work is so important in general, but now with the events of the last couple of weeks, my guess is it has multiplied the significance and your focus.
Yeah, you know, I would, and it's hard to remember that we're in the midst of responding to two pandemics at once. So we're still in our recovery stage for the COVID-19 pandemic, and now we're responding to the untimely death of George Floyd.
Before we get into the new fund, I wanted to just get your take as a member of the community, seeing these events going on around you. How are you doing?
You know, that the answer to that question depends on the time of day and the day that you ask. In this moment, I'm feeling very somber. I am reflective, giving a ton of thought and energy to how to best catalyze this moment or use this moment to catalyze long-standing change. That really is, I'm preoccupied with that. I'm sure that when some of the adrenaline subsides, I'll still just be sad and angry and hurt.
Are you heartened at all, Acooa, by the call for dialogue among so many different kinds of people?
I am hopeful. I am cautiously optimistic. I am hopeful because it feels different this time. And at the same time, what history has shown us is that, you know, there may be something that sparks an initial kind of surge in energy and attention. But then eventually we kind of subside back into the status quo, and I am doing everything within my power to not let that be the pattern this time. And I know that there are a whole lot of other people that are similarly motivated. So that's what has me optimistic, but cautiously optimistic.
Right, very much so. I think you on Real Talk with Roshini, I always like to get real, and we have to remind people of that reality check. But I'm also hopeful in that more hearts and minds have been opened. Unfortunately, it's because of the violence, but maybe that is just what we needed, the complete shake to the overall system like this to get more people to get involved.
Absolutely. So there's thinking around systems change that would say, you know, you can change the policies and then align the practices with the policies, but until you change people's mental models, like their understanding for how the world works, there's not the opportunity for transformational change. And my hope in the sense that I have is that, you know, seeing such a gruesome murder in real time in broad daylight has done enough to rock people's mental models for how things actually work particularly for African Americans in this community, so that there is openness to transformational change. I'm hopeful for that. I've seen signs of it, but I'm not going to take my foot off the gas.
Yeah, I know you won't. And I wanted you to talk about this new Twin Cities Rebuild for the Future Fund. It's a partnership among the Greater Twin Cities United Way, the St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation, and the Minneapolis Foundation. Can you tell us about it?
Yes, I'm super excited about this work and want listeners to know that we didn't pull together this partnership solely in response to the Floyd murder. We have been talking for some time, trying to figure out what was the right topics for us to come together on, where our joint efforts were greater than the sum of each of our parts, and where the work was complementary to either what we were doing or what was already happening in the community, and saw criminal justice as a really great opportunity for us to work together to drive meaningful change. And it just so happens that we had brought a project director on board on Monday And so quickly put her to work, and were able to respond with this fund. And I have been just overwhelmed with the gratitude for the generosity that people have shown. For us to have launched this fund with already over $1 million in such a short period of time is just incredible, and it'll go directly to small minority-owned businesses that were in the affected corridors. So I'm very excited about them.
Yeah, and Acooa, I really love hearing about that direct help. It's not like you have to wait a month or go through all this paperwork. It's right here. This fund is right here in the community, run by people who are right here in the community. It's the Twin Cities Rebuild for the Future Fund. I'm speaking with Acooa Ellis. You can, too, in our remaining minutes, send us a text. Give us a call, 651-989-9226. Acooa is the Senior Vice President of Community Impact for the Greater Twin Cities United Way. And I also want to say, as a woman of color myself, Acooa, we need people like you in high positions like this. It is for everybody, right? The leadership
Absolutely.
roles are for everybody. And the visuals, the optics of you being the person in that position, it says so much in itself. There are so many subtextual messages because you are in that role. How can people get access to this money? I mean, the real tactical.
Sure. So if individuals want to give, they can find information for how to do that on our website, gtcuw.org. And for those businesses that will receive dollars, it will happen through nonprofit intermediaries that are particularly focused on providing business support. So we've invited a number of community-based business development intermediaries or community development intermediaries to apply for these dollars, and then they will actually distribute the grant to the businesses because they've got those long-standing relationships. Because we don't want to get in the way of that. We want to support community-based leadership. Those dollars will be made available before the end of June. So we're moving as quickly as possible to make that happen.
Well, I applaud you. I applaud your partners in this effort. And again, it's not just one fund that's going to solve all the problems, but you can lift people economically and help these businesses survive and get through this time, but then also move forward and thrive. The more success we have with the economics, Acooa, I really believe that is such a big building block to also solve the systemic issues.
Oh, my goodness, absolutely. And inclusion is huge in that effort. I want to go back to the point that you made around being a woman of color in this role. And that's why representation and inclusion is so important. So as we think about rebuilding our economy and once folks go back to work, it'll be super important for employers to be thinking about how they elevate the voices around the table and diversify who's making decisions, because representation absolutely matters.
It really does. And while I have you here, such a powerful voice, I'm going to ask this question. It's a little off topic, but we hear sometimes people, I know you can handle it. We hear sometimes, you know what, I want to diversify our ranks. I want to have more women or more people of color, but we just don't have the applications. And you and I know that's a bunch of crap. How do all employers, and again, I don't want someone hiring someone just because they're brown or black
That's
or
exactly
native.
Right. And no one wants
I want a
hired.
qualified person, right?
That's right.
Because look, I'm Sri Lankan American. I'll speak for myself. Anytime something bad happens for a Sri Lankan American, we all look bad. I mean, it's just how it is because we're such a minority. I want only qualified people hired, no matter what they look like. How can employers in the Twin Cities, in Minnesota, find a diverse pool? What's your? I know it's not necessarily a one-stop shop, but give us some advice on that.
No, I've got two tips for listeners in that boat. So number one, I agree that in many instances that's a load of bull. And
thanks for keeping the language PG. Yep, real talk. Yep, as long as we stay, FCC approved, we're good.
What I would say, two really tactical things is I wrote an article about this very topic before, how to actualize leadership within your organization that speaks to, number one, we see talent and we see qualifications where we expect to find them. And so we've got to be thinking about how we identify what is a good cultural fit. We've got to think about how we determine who is a good leader and understand and interrogate what is informing that assumption, because there's a lot of bias held in those assumptions of what is professional, what is leadership, when a lot of people are leading, even if they don't have the professional title. And we've got to lend credence to folks showing up in a way that is authentic to them, but also effective. So that's the first thing. Read my article. And then the second.
Well, I was going to say, first of all, I want you to email me that article. I will put it up on multiple social media platforms. But let's just remind people what you just said. Acooa wrote an article for Forbes. Okay. I'm like, that's big time. So I will help spread that word. But your message is so true. And it takes all of us and those in positions of power who have the ability to hire. And those people look like you, they look like me, they look like my boss, John, who's a white male. All of these different people have the ability to make more inclusive what we look at as our leadership and who gets hired and who gets to elevate. But we all need to do it. It is not just that guy or that gal's issue or problem. It is all of us. It's why, when I was asked to do this show and we have a special day of programming, I wanted to have different voices even throughout these 3 hours since 6 a.m. And we've had a white man, we've had an Hispanic male, we've had a black man, we've had you. This is how we get people to listen, is we don't just go to the same people all the time, but we are also eager to listen to everyone's viewpoint.
Yeah, the one other tactical suggestion that I would give for leaders is to engage with the Center for Economic Inclusion. That's led by Tawana Black.
She was just on with me last weekend. She's fabulous.
Oh, wonderful. Yep. So I would just refer people there if they're really looking to drive inclusion within their businesses. And I'm sure she shares that, even when our economy was in a better place and we had lower unemployment for Black Minnesotans, that many instances they were funneled into lower wage jobs. And so, I think these 2 points go hand in hand. We've got to acknowledge the brilliance that resides in people that may show up in different ways, because ultimately we're going to need everybody's perspective on board to really manage the path forward so that we come out better on the other end. Like that is what I am just maniacally focused on right now. How do we take this moment and come on the other side better than where we started? I think it's possible.
It is possible, and I want to wind it down with that because you just said it so well. She is Acooa Ellis. You can find out more about the Twin Cities Rebuild for the Future Fund, as well as the work of the Greater Twin Cities United Way at gtcuw.org. Acooa, it's such a pleasure. Thank you so much, and I will have you back on my show in the future.